Hello and welcome to this webinar, The Future of Work. This is one of 3 webinars that accompany the Refresh program. This presentation looks at the changing nature of work and especially the influence of technology. But rather than a doom and gloom scenario of inevitable job loss and decline, I want to discuss ways in which we can make sure to stay relevant and engaged in work in ways that we choose for as long as we need. I'm Jenny McGee. I'm a trainer and coach, and I'm passionate about helping people to make the most of the second half of life. And this topic, the future of work, is really relevant to that group. Change, any change, can bring fear and uncertainty, and the antidote to that is knowledge, agency, and action. So let's get started. The future of work is a hot topic. There are plenty of alarmists who would have us believe that the sky is falling and the end is nigh, that the robots are the future and that the worst science fiction movies are about to come true. But even professional futurists are a bit careful here. And as the late US baseball player and armchair philosopher Yogi Berra said, it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. Now, some of you heading towards retirement or exiting the workforce might decide you're not too concerned about the future of work. After all, you won't be there. But as many of us are working longer and working differently, this is a matter to consider. The world of work will affect how we access and consume products and services. It will affect how we live. It will affect how we spend our leisure time and how we are supported in our older age. The changing world of work will affect our families and future generations. It will affect the economy and the way we engage with the wider world. So in short, directly or indirectly, the future of work will affect you, so it's worth thinking about. My hope is that you will continue discussing the questions raised here with colleagues at home and the community. Now, there's every chance that some of the research I've quoted might be superseded by new material, so hold this lightly and go looking for further information. There are many questions to answer, to consider about the changing nature of work, and certainly there are more questions than answers. And even in 10 or 15 years, those questions will be different again. We need to be comfortable with not knowing all that the future holds. So just keep in mind that all the research shows that over time, technology has created more jobs than it's replaced. Yes, that's really true. Now, if you're me and you grew up in the 60s, perhaps in your same vintage, you might remember the Jetsons. It was a popular 1960s cartoon series that featured a family living in the utopian future. They lived in houses in the sky, drove flying cars, had a robotic maid called Rosie, used mobile phones and served all their meals via a push-button machine. As a youngster, I remember watching the Jetsons with a kind of amazement at the fantastic imagination. But while their sky houses, their flying cars and push-button meal dispensers are still some way off, robotic vacuum cleaners and lawnmowers are almost standard fare. And apparently, more people in the world now have more mobile phones than toothbrushes. Go figure. Some of our technology might even amaze the Jetsons. So, how on earth did we get to this point? Well, the first industrial revolution, there are 4 of them, if you look at the screen. There are 4 revolutions, and the first industrial revolution started in the late 1700s. It was about coal, water and steam, and it brought with it the steam engine and innovations that enabled the large-scale manufacturing of goods and products, such as textiles. The first industrial revolution's impact on civilization was immense. People who traditionally centred on round villages and farming and the local crafting of goods now flocked to the cities. They worked in factories under low wages and in terrible conditions. Some 100-odd years later, the second industrial revolution came about with the invention of electricity, and this enabled mass production. From the late 1800s to the early 1900s, this phase marked the internal combustion engine and eventually the automobile. The period was marked with increased use of steel and eventually petroleum, of electricity, and it allowed much of the progress of the first industrial revolution to move beyond cities and achieve scale across countries and continents. The third industrial revolution was all about computers. From around the 1950s onwards, computers and digital systems enabled new ways of processing and sharing information. Transistors, microprocessors, robotics and automation, not to mention the internet and mass communications, would eventually allow for the ultimate in scale, globalization. Now this brings us to the fourth industrial revolution, which is sometimes called the cyber revolution. And this represents the merging of the capabilities of both humans and machines. It's the era of artificial intelligence, of genome editing, of biometrics, of renewable energy, 3D printing, autonomous vehicles, and the Internet of Things. Digital technology has and is transforming the way we live and the way we work. It's changing the way we see the world and far beyond that to our place in the universe. It's both exciting and terrifying, and it's coming at us fast. A 2013 McKinsey report had this to say, the uptake of technology we're experiencing in work now is estimated to be 10 times the scale and 300 times the pace of the Industrial Revolution. Wow. It's hard to imagine. It's almost hard to get your head around. Thomas Opong wrote in a 2018 article around technology at work of the importance of being able to adapt as technology changes and new trends emerge in a fast-paced digital world. So, how are you responding to technological change? Are you a laggard at the right-hand end of this bell curve? Are you a technophobe who avoids and resists change until it's forced on you? Or are you an early adopter? Are you excited and ready to queue for hours for the latest piece of leading-edge technology? If so, you likely have the latest iPhone and you probably wear tracking technology to monitor your health. But maybe, just maybe, you're like most of us, perhaps happy to watch and wait until new technology becomes mainstream. Because then you know that it will have been superseded by something newer, brighter, shinier, and possibly better. Actually, how you feel about technology and how you approach change has significant implications for the way you deal with the future of work. In workshops, I often hear concerns expressed as fears. People wonder, will machines take away human jobs? How will we keep up with changes? What work will we do? How will we even earn money if the robots take our jobs? And will there actually be enough jobs for everyone? And what will workplaces look like? So take a moment now and just pause this recording and think about those questions and any other questions that you have, other questions that you might have thought of. And if you're watching this with someone else, check what their concerns might be. The question of how we might earn money in a future without jobs is the subject of a really interesting TED Talk by Martin Ford. I can encourage you to watch it. Go via this link. But roughly he makes 3 key points. Firstly, that technology will astound us, that we can't really prepare for that. And secondly, he points to machine learning as the biggest disruptor to existing jobs. And finally, he reassures us that there will be jobs where machines can't replace humans. So if you have time, go to TED.com and watch his full talk. Now, I think he's right. Some of the technology is astonishing, and we're only just beginning to feel this disruptive influence. Global retailer Amazon now has over 200,000 mobile robots operating its warehouses. And while they still employ hundreds of thousands of human staff, the implications for logistics are enormous as even more robots are brought in. The key, of course, is that robots can work 24/7 with no overtime or sick leave. The health sector is not immune either. New studies have shown that robot radiologists are far more accurate at picking up abnormalities on scans and x-rays than human radiologists. That's because robots have been programmed with thousands of examples of scans, which they can process in an instant when they're looking for patterns. But the human radiologist may have decades of experience, but couldn't possibly access the same range of information in the same way as the robot. What about driverless cars? Well, driverless trucks and cars are now rolling out across the US and Europe in increasing numbers, and forecasts suggest that driverless cars will make up 75% of traffic in the world by 2040. That has major implications for the transportation industry, from drivers, obviously, but right through to petrol service attendants. And as the accident rates of driverless vehicles outweigh those of human drivers, maybe we'll even see that it becomes unsafe or even illegal for people to drive vehicles. And finally, fourth disruption. The final example is perhaps a bit closer to home. Administration work that involves repeatable routine tasks is vulnerable to artificial intelligence machines. Yep, sorry, if you're into admin, this might be where the weak point is for you. The thing is that these machines can operate faster and cheaper, and they don't take holidays or finish work at 5 o'clock. So almost every field is open to new technological developments. If you like, pause here for a minute and just have a think about it. How vulnerable is your area of work? In another interesting TED Talk, Anthony Goldbloom says that we have no chance of competing against machines on frequent, high-volume tasks. But the thing is that machine learning relies on large volumes of data to provide patterns. And it's humans who do best in novel situations with problems that we've never seen before. Do you remember that I said earlier that over time, technology has created more jobs than it's replaced? There are a whole bunch of jobs now that we didn't know, or that we do now, that simply didn't exist 5 or 10 years ago. Take a look at some of these. Social media manager, Trade Me store owner, YouTube content creator, drone operators, virtual assistants, Uber drivers, bloggers, even life coaches. One estimate I read suggested that 65% of children in primary schools now will go into jobs that do not yet exist. Now, actually, that's really encouraging. New Zealand has often been said to lag behind the rest of the world. For years it was a standing joke that I always thought had something to do with only seeing Coronation Street once a week. But it meant that being so far away from the world meant we had to wait for trends and for new products to be shipped. Technology, of course, has changed that. We're instantly aware of global events and often at the forefront of new industries. Just look at the success of Gallagher Industries, of Fisher & Paykel Healthcare and of Rocket Lab, just to name only a few. Overall, though, New Zealand workplaces are now somewhat slower in taking up new technology. The Productivity Commission was established in 2010 to provide advice to government on improving workplace individual productivity. Their focus is on lifting productivity and well-being of New Zealanders. And given that Stats rated New Zealand 40% below the average productivity of other OECD countries, this is really important work. As part of their remit, the Commission was tasked with examining how New Zealand can maximise the opportunities and manage the risks of disruptive technological change and its impact on the future of work and the workforce. So far, the Commission has released 2 draft reports. The first report, this one here on the screen now, relates to technology and productivity, and is to some extent, the findings are quite reassuring. Their key findings show that there's little evidence that widespread disruption is coming to work anytime soon. They found that the likely pace and scale of technological change will depend on developments overseas. Makes sense. They saw that technology and labour market trends tend to lag behind those overseas, and that the main problem facing New Zealand today isn't too much technology, it's not enough. They indicated and recommend that New Zealand needs to embrace technology, not to treat it as a threat. The final Commission report's due out in March 2020, and these draft reports are available for anyone to comment on. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? So if we look at that and think that we need to embrace technology, it might be easier then to step back and say, well, the future of robotic work is a long way away, we don't need to worry. But actually, I think, if anything, it gives us more lead time. It gives us an opportunity. So far, so good then. We can still watch these trends and still be unprepared. But the thing is, the future of work is not some turn-of-the-century Y2K bug that may turn out to be a fizzer. We know that technology can often do things faster and better and more reliably than humans. So where does that leave us? Actually, it leaves us with the human factor. The ability to manage unpredictable situations, to problem solve, and to exercise that most wonderful quality of all, humanity. It's these human skills that current technology simply can't match, and that, I think, is our saving grace. Margaret Heffernan is really interesting. In this TED Talk, she outlines the human talents that she believes are essential. It's worth you pausing here to watch it. I really like the final comment that she makes in this talk. She says, "The future is uncharted. We can't map it until we get there. But that's okay, because we have so much imagination if we use it. We have deep talents of inventiveness and exploration if we apply them. We are brave enough to invent things we've never seen before. But lose those skills and we are adrift. Hone them and develop them, and we can make any future we choose." Stuff. Some of you might remember Alvin Toffler, he was an American futurist and writer. He was well known for his discussion around technology and its effect. I know the book Future Shock had a really profound effect on me when I read it in the 1970s. But what stayed most, though, is this quote from Toffler. He said, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." Much of what needs to change is our thinking about what's possible. What about you? What do you believe about technology? What do you believe about your ability to change, about your ability to adapt and to grow? If you're watching this with a friend, with a colleague, just pause for a minute and think about how that might affect you. There are several things that I think are worthwhile considering, because we know that we can't affect the development, the rapid change and the onset of technology. All we can really affect is ourselves. So I think the starting point is here, that we need to be able to choose a mindset that supports us, that's most helpful. That's the starting point. If you've read anything of Carol Dweck's work on fixed and growth mindset, you'll know what I mean. She was a Stanford professor who talked about a fixed mindset being the attitude that I can't learn, I can't adapt, and I don't need to. Whereas a growth mindset says I'm entirely capable of learning new skills, of taking on new ideas and adapting to new situations. There are some things I can't do yet, but I'm really ready to learn. So a fixed mindset closes me down, whereas a growth mindset opens me up to possibility. So which mindset do you think would be most helpful for you if you are aware that technology will change, is changing and will continue to change your workplace? And where is your mindset most helpful? When it comes to adapting to technology and change, take a minute or so, press pause, and perhaps answer this question for yourself too. The second thing I think is worthwhile considering is to know that technology is less daunting than we imagine. Now, yes, driverless cars and robots that run warehouses and robotic radiologists that can scan X-rays with more accuracy than humans. That's tempting to be, say, for it to be wow and for us to feel overawed. But the greatest irony, I think, of technology in workplaces in New Zealand is that for most of us, we have smarter personal technology at home. So think about it, than we have at work. So think about it. So smartphones, laptops, smart TVs, tablets, plus all the apps and the technology that goes with them. If you contrast that to the organisation that you work with, that you work in, think about the processes which are still perhaps a little on the archaic. I know one organisation, large organisation that I work with, still uses paper-based timesheets and payslips. So knowing that you already confidently use a whole range of technology should make you feel a little less daunted and a bit more prepared. After all, you've faced change and challenge before and you've survived. So what's the biggest change that you've witnessed in your working life? Was it the introduction of computers? What was the technological change that you've already witnessed? Was it, and now in terms of hot desking and the way that open plan offices work, how has it been? And how did you adjust? Knowing you've done it once should be that confidence booster. Again, take some time, press pause, and have a think about this. Third thing that I want to talk about is how we focus on our innately human capabilities. We know that robots and AI can do some things faster, cheaper and easier and more reliably than humans, but the future of work is about a partnership between technology and people. So we need to look at our end of the bargain. What is it that humans do? What are the qualities and capabilities we have that are innate to us? As in, not learned, but innate. Think about the strengths that you have. What are these qualities? And these qualities on the screen that you can see, what do they represent to you? And which are your strengths? What do others say about you? Do they say that you're a really resourceful person, or that cooperation and collaboration are your strengths? These innate attributes, these are your unique thumbprint. And if we combine this with learned skills, this gives you an edge like no other people. And now more than ever is the time to amplify your qualities. Now, if you really don't know what yours are, I'd suggest that you go online and do the Strengths Finder test. There are plenty of those. Some of them are free and some of them you would pay to do. But get very clear. Having done the Refresh program too, you'll know that we've looked at values and what matters to us. So go back to the values and what matters to us, to you, and think about those in terms of your strengths as well. The next part of it then is to develop your uniquely human skills. Now, we've talked about the innate qualities, the things that make you who you are, your personality. But the skill side of it is a different story. So if we talk about skills, there are innate skills, but there are learned skills. And in this human-machine partnership, these learned skills add enormous value to our human contribution. Yet, in the broadest, yet most wrongly defined terms, these are often called soft skills, which are ironic when they are the hardest to learn. But they need to be part of our DNA to thrive in the new world of work. In their book called Forever Skills, Kieran Flanagan and Dan Gregory interviewed hundreds of successful people to identify the key skills that matter for work, for business, and for life in the future. And rather than panicking about artificial intelligence and algorithms, their advice is focus on the things that won't change within us. That's right, focus on the things that won't change within us. There are three aspects to it that they say. First of all, focus on creativity. And this represents the ability to think and to solve problems in ways that we haven't seen before. The second part of it, they reckon, is communication. And this includes oral and written skills, obviously. But it also includes leadership building, leadership skills, team building. And these are the hardest to learn and the most crucial to our success. The third group of skills that Flanagan and Gregory talk about are control skills. And these relate more to our ability to self-regulate and influence the world around us. If you're looking for a really comprehensive reading list of where we should be putting our attention for future-proofing ourselves, then I would go no further than Forever Skills. It's available in bookstores near you. Okay, so take a moment. What skills would make the biggest difference to your ability to work? Thinking about strengthening those skills, thinking about taking your innate qualities, thinking about the skills that you might need to develop to enhance, to mean that your human component to the partnership with machines actually is really strong. These are rarely included, these skills, in organisational development programs because of the assumption that they're innate. But that's not true. These skills that we talked about are learned. So critical thinking gets developed by learning to look at a question from multiple angles, by challenging assumptions and by listening to other views. Emotional intelligence is a skill, and it requires deep self-awareness and a skill to self-regulate your communication style. Cross-cultural communication is a skill, and it's built on empathy and acceptance, but it means that we need to recognise our biases and put them aside to engage effectively with other cultures. Now that skills list goes on and on and on, and you've probably all come across, if you're in leadership roles, lists of competencies which are supposedly the key to being a good leader. You might have an innate head start, but these skills take conscious development, and they will set you apart because they're the foundation of relationships with people. I'm always surprised by a particular response I get when I ask a room full of people who is responsible for their professional development, because their answer is invariably my employer. Yet with shrinking learning and development budgets, there's next to no chance that all the learning you need or want will be provided for you. So don't wait for your manager to decide what you will learn. Take responsibility for it yourself. Skills need constant developing and refreshing, so pick yourself and go looking for opportunities. Now, we used to think that learning needed to happen formally and in a classroom, but that's no longer true. We also thought that once something was learned, that was done for life. You know, we learned maths at school, what else did we need? But interesting, the research now shows that the half-life of skills we learned for work has reduced massively. In other words, in 1984, you could reasonably expect that a skill you learned would stay current and useful for several decades. The pace of change now means that the business skills you learn today will be outdated within a few years. There are loads of examples. Just look at your technical skills. How much of what you learned 20 years ago is still relevant? You can't rely on old skills, and you can't rely on others to deliver what you need. They simply no longer have all of the answers. So what steps are you taking to keep learning? The opportunities are everywhere these days, and many of them are free or low cost. You can do them at home, you can do them in your lunch hour, you can do them with a group. YouTube and educational channels are available, and YouTube, of course, is more than just crazy cat videos. There are online education programs such as Coursera and Udemy, the Khan Academy, Skillshare. There are loads of them. And I think the other change is that learning very much used to be about a qualification. So we would go to a formal class and finish a qualification and get the certificate and present it on our CV. But actually more and more the learning is open and it's available to all people. So universities are starting to get in on the act too. MOOCs, M-O-O-C-S, MOOCs, are massive open online courses. These are free for anyone to enrol, and they're often university courses from really top-notch institutions with no fee. Now, the no fee usually means you don't get to do the assessments or achieve their qualification, but you still have full access to all the learning materials. If you want to have a closer look, take a look at the MOOCs offered by Harvard, MIT, Berkeley, Princeton, Oxford, and many others. If you look at edx.org, you'll find all of those, loads of different courses available on those platforms. So I really challenge you to take up a new learning opportunity. Remember, actually, it doesn't have to be work-related. Go looking for topics that interest you, because the more we focus on just learning about work, the narrower our view is of the world. There's never been an easier time to go and get an education to learn. It's up to you. We don't need to stick to our narrow niches. Broadening our knowledge and finding intersections between different disciplines all makes life more interesting and keeps us relevant. I've talked about the pace and the magnitude of change at work, not just what's coming, but what's already here. You know, sometimes it's easy to feel overwhelmed and we just want to go back to things the way things were, or pretend that things will be okay without any action on our part. I must admit, I reckon the response to this cartoon is, yeah, right. You know, Darwin was right all those years ago. Change is inevitable, though few will enjoy it. And the best we can do moving into a new working world is to become comfortable with our discomfort. So how can you be ready for change, for the changing world of work? Management consultant Peter Drucker suggested that trying to predict the future is trying to drive down a country road at night with no lights while looking out the back window of the car. But he also believed that the best way to predict your future is to create it. I think learning is the most important key that we have for facing this new world of work. While we individually have little influence over the way the future of work evolves, we always have a choice as to how we respond to what comes along. I think the best response is to open ourselves to learning, because learning and work will be so intertwined. Becoming lifelong learners enables us to have choices. It offers us creativity to embrace new ideas, the willingness to recognise opportunities, the confidence to explore alternatives, the flexibility to change direction, and the courage to reinvent ourselves as often as we choose. So there we have it. Thanks for joining me in this webinar to consider the future of work. I think there are loads of things to talk about, loads of things to consider. This is the conversations that we need to have more openly in our workplaces as things evolve. It's not something to be afraid of, it's something to look ahead to. If you're interested in reading further, then I recommend these 4 books. Cribb and Glover, Don't Worry About the Robots. Davenport and Kirby, Only Humans Need Apply. Flanagan and Gregory, as I said, Forever Skills. And Thomas and Celie Brown's book, A New Culture of Learning. And of course, go ahead and investigate the TED Talks and online learning platforms mentioned earlier. I encourage you to start conversations with colleagues, friends and family, because the future of work will affect us all.